My next guest, he is a former WWE wrestler. He is the winner of the first ever WWE Cruiserweight Classic. You can catch him wrestling on Impact Wrestling, 8/7 Central PM on AXS TV. Please welcome TJ Perkins. How you doing, TJ?
Hey, brother. Thank you very much for having me. I'm doing all right. How are you holding up this year with everything?
I'm doing good, man. 2020, it's kind of been a rocky year for a lot of people, a lot of changing and adapting and having to adjust to certain things. For me, though, it really hasn't changed. My day job's still the same. Very
Yeah.
thankful for that. Just very, very busy, especially with, the YouTube channel and the podcast. Everything's going great, man. How has it been for you?
I mostly the same. I mean, thankfully my day job hasn't changed either. So, and I was kind of blessed last year to trade one uniform in for three different uniforms, several different uniforms. So my volume of work is pretty high. To be honest, this year's as busy of a year as I've had this whole decade. So for me, I've been pretty lucky in that way.
That's awesome. Now, for my audience that may not know who you are, TJ, could you please let them know what it is, who it is that you work for now?
Well, those that may have heard of me or know me would know me probably from WWE. I'm a professional wrestler, and I spent a few years with WWE, and I've spent 22 years altogether doing this racket. And over the last year, I left WWE and am now in several different companies. Impact Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, MLW, probably AAA coming up as well.
Nice.
I guess it's kind of like if like a boxer leaves Top Rank or something and they
Yeah.
like decide to promote themselves,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. That's sort of what I had. That was kind of like the business model I had in mind was really what it was. So
Nice, nice. So you were in WWE and now you're wrestling. So, a lot of people can catch you on Impact Wrestling, correct? Usually, like as far as like televised events.
yeah, Impact, their weekly show is on every Tuesday night. And then New Japan Pro Wrestling has a weekly show, well, several weekly shows, but or a couple anyway. Their Japanese one is available on NJPW World. So is their USA one. The USA uh, broadcast is available every Friday. So Impact's is
Okay.
Tuesday, New Japan's Friday. MLW, actually, I'm not sure about their
Scheduling.
distribution schedule. Yeah, but they you can definitely find a lot of stuff on their YouTube channel and then their different social accounts. If you look up Major League Wrestling, and you can find some stuff. They just had a reboot for all of their seasonal content, so a lot of those events are going to be available now every week. So yeah, you can check those out.
Nice. 22 years. I know, man. You've been doing this for a good minute.
Yeah, a long time. So it's more than half my life.
Yeah. And what age did you start?
13.
13 years old. Wow. And you
Yeah.
started training at that age, right?
Yeah, 13. Started training, debuted shortly after that, and goes by fast, man. You blink, and now I'm here.
Nice. So now, talk to me about the early beginnings. Was there people that were questioning, like, oh, you're training to, be, a wrestler at the age of 13? Was there hesitancy from maybe the person that, helped train you or brought you up in the business?
Not really. I didn't really have any kind of mentor or anybody that was
Okay.
like looking after me. When I broke in, it was mostly just me flying blind and just kind of on my own. And I kind of got in at a time when it wasn't common for younger people to get in. I mean, it's still not that common, obviously, for like
Yeah.
somebody as young as 13, 14, 15, whatever to get in. But at that time, it was more like kind of like a college or post-college age sort of thing. You had to be like 18 or
Yeah.
21 for a gym to kind of take you on and train you and things like that. But growing up in Los Angeles, Southern California has such a strong lucha libre culture. We're so close to the border, obviously, and it's kind of like boxing with them. If you
Yeah.
could walk and step in the ring, then they're willing to train you if you're able to hang in there. And I got lucky. I was an all sport athlete growing up, so I was pretty good, like um, as an athlete, but you know, I took to wrestling pretty naturally, so I kind of lucked out in that way. It
Yeah.
sort of falls off me and fits me, you know, like a glove. So I was able to do okay, and they kept pushing me and training me, and just kept growing from there.
So TJ, so you talked about it right now. You've had an athletic background. So
Yeah.
why a professional wrestling, TJ? What made you say I want to do this?
Uh, you know, I never really had like an aha moment, I
Okay.
guess, to put it into those terms. A lot of people have that like a specific star that they followed, you know, a
Yeah.
hero or something, or like a moment, like, oh, this is where I discovered wrestling. And
Yeah.
for me, I don't know, like I've it's always been my earliest memories when I was 2, 3 years old is watching, you know, WWF Saturday Night's Main Event, and it just is always part of my life from an entertainment standpoint. And it always really kind of dominated my psyche. Like I always assumed from like 4 or 5 years old, like I was just going to grow up to be a wrestler, sort of in a naive sort of way, you
Yeah.
know. And as I got older, like I was becoming like an older kid or whatever, it really kind of dominated my interest to the point of like I assumed everybody loved it as much as me. Like
Yeah.
to me, it was like how could anybody not love it as much as me? So
For sure.
I assumed everybody wanted to grow up to be a wrestler, and we all would do that. Like that's just how I was as a kid.
Yeah.
Um, and then you know I get to where I'm 11, 12 years old, and you do career day stuff in school because you're getting older now, you know. And that, and you know, looking into this is what, like around that time is when I started to kind of think like how is this actually going to be a viable thing for me? Like how do you start and that sort of thing. And just kind of figured it out. But there was really never one moment or anything. I can't remember life before knowing what wrestling was. It's my earliest memories are
Okay.
of following it. Yeah.
Can you describe the road that it is to be in the independent scene? What kind of challenges did you encounter growing up in that scene?
Well, I mean, it's kind of, especially at that time in like the 90s, it was really kind of old schoolish. It's very different now. I mean,
Yeah.
you you got to think about sign of the times in like 1998. There's the internet really wasn't a thing yet.
Yeah.
Like it was, but there wasn't really anything on it. So wrestling wasn't, you know, other than like, you know, AOL.com and like
Yeah.
WWF.com, which was really nothing. You
Yeah.
know, there was really not a lot of wrestling on the internet. And, you know, so, and there was no social media. So, you know, Google, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, MySpace, Facebook, all that's out. None of that
Dial-up internet
existed.
times.
Yeah. So, like, you know, it was really kind of the Wild West still back then. I wouldn't say quite like territory days, but it's closer to that than what it is now, you
Definitely.
know, as far as having like this universal platform for like distribution of content and content creation. And, you know, guys have so many different like um, forms of content creation and levels to their job. Whereas before, like it, when I started, like merchandise wasn't really a thing at shows.
Yeah.
Like unless you were in like WWE or like WCW or something like that, it was like almost kind of weird to like make a shirt and like sell it. Like
Yeah.
not a lot of guys did it. You know, maybe a handful of guys at a show might. Um, and even just content like that they're producing, like stuff was still on VHS. DVDs were still a new thing in
Yeah.
1998, you know.
They
So
were.
unless it was like, yeah, unless it was like big budget movies that you would find at Best Buy or something, DVDs still were a few years away from really being produced for wrestling. Um, so it was like, it was really, you know, sort of a tough thing. Like for my age, you know, at 13, breaking in, you know, these guys are 25, 30-year-old, like grown men. And I have to, you got to remember too, like no MapQuest, no GPS, cell phones. Most people didn't have cell phones.
Yeah.
So like going to shows or something, I still had to write down directions on like, you know, post-its and like napkins and stuff. If you get lost, you have to pull over, go to a gas station and ask
For
somebody where you are.
directions.
Yeah, you had to use a payphone if you needed to call ahead or something. So that's what life was like for me. Like I would, you know, ditch school on like a Friday and go to a show that night somewhere, maybe Anaheim, Los Angeles, San Francisco, or something. And I'd ask guys in the locker room, like, who's on the Las Vegas or Phoenix or Tijuana show on Saturday, the next night. And whoever was on that, like, okay, I'm going to jump in your car. So I'd jump in their car
Yeah.
and we'd go to that show. And then when I get to that show, I say, okay, who's doing San Diego tomorrow night, or who's doing Bakersfield, wherever it was. And I would jump in their car for Sunday. And then after that, I'd say, okay, who's going back to like the Riverside area, like back to, which is like the part of California where I live. And I would just see if they can just drop me back off at home or at school on Monday morning, and I would just go back to to school. So
Huh.
that's like a typical week for me as a wrestler trying to come up as a teenager in the 90s. Like, that's what it was like. Obviously we live very different from that now.
Very, very different now.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So yeah, that's what it was like at that time. You really only got around by getting around. Now it's very different. You can send your name around the world without leaving your living room first. And at that time, I remember at that time on the West Coast, if we got an East Coast wrestler coming in, that we would have heard so much about them and probably never have seen them. They could be
Yeah.
7 feet tall or 5'5". We would never know. We just heard the name and that they're pretty good, and that we would see them when we see them.
Yeah.
That's what it was like at that time.
And it's real interesting because I mean, growing up now, you definitely sometimes take things for granted. Like nowadays, like what you said, it's very easy for people to get their name out. There's YouTube now where you could, if you hear about someone, if you're living in California and you hear about somebody, in Japan, it's very easy to just find them, and
Yeah.
it's a good avenue to have now. But I can definitely see how challenging it was growing up and how you made your name on there. Is there anything what's the thing you enjoyed the most out of wrestling? Obviously take the wrestling itself out of it, but was it maybe the travel? I mean, was it meeting different kinds of people when you were on the road? Was there something that you just truly enjoyed that obviously I know we're hungry and you're driving for a dream, but something else that made the ride enjoyable?
I mean, the camaraderie.
Yeah.
I think that's the big thing. A lot of times, to be honest, that's really more important to me than the job itself. I mean, there's an old saying in wrestling: the only thing that's real is the money and the miles.
Yeah.
And some guys, they live for the show and they live for the attention. And there's nothing wrong with that if you're wired for that. A lot of people are. But in the purpose of that saying is it was meant to really kind of keep guys grounded, so they understand that, like, other than the business, making a living for your family and how much you have to put your body through in order to do it, like, those are the two primary things that should be, like, kind of prioritized, like what you should concentrate the most on, because that's really the only tangible things. All the other
Yeah.
stuff, sure, like, some people really like being a star, like love the adrenaline rush or something
Yeah.
like that. I've never been one of those guys. So outside of it being a job that is admittedly fun to do and something that I love, and am somewhat particularly good at, the thing that I really like is that it's like being in war. You pick who you want to be in the foxhole with.
Yeah.
You pick like-minded people, and it's like, it's nice to be going through, in this case, the analogy of war would just be life, and you're going through life with these group of people, and that's what I like, is like, every day for the most part, being around these guys. That kind of camaraderie is you live for that.
Who's one person, if you could say, in any part of your life that you really enjoyed traveling with, maybe, and driving to a show or whatever it is like that?
So for those that know me from WWE, one of my favorite guys ever to travel with was Rich Swann.
Oh,
And now we're together in Impact Wrestling, so it's nice to see
yeah.
him in the locker rooms all the time. But we would always travel together. I was always really good with Lucha House Party. Lince Dorado was my favorite, my best friend in WWE, and he's like a brother to me. Those are two guys that stand out a lot. My best friend, probably overall in wrestling is Willie Mack.
Yeah.
He's also from Impact Wrestling, and now we actually share a company. For a long time, we were good friends, obviously in real life, but we were never not always in the same place at the same time. But now it's great because I get to kind of work with my best friend. So
Awesome. So, you talked about, you're formerly in WWE. You actually were the first ever winner of the Cruiserweight Classic. What was that experience like?
uh I mean, in some ways, another just another day. um, I guess for me, it was just another day. But it's nice. I mean, there's obviously a certain sense of validation that comes with it. You know, everybody wants to feel like they accomplish more than just making money. And I try never to get wrapped up in things like that. Like I'm not particularly fond of a logo or anything
Okay.
like that, but um I guess in a small way it's nice to have that sort of validation in a way, and it's pretty cool to be part of history, like 20-30 years from now. That's one of those things that are going to it'll be part of video packages and things that further generation, like I might, someday when I'm dead, like there's going to be people looking back like where did this all come from at a certain point. And that's going to be, even just a small footnote for them to kind of pass through, and that's pretty cool. Not very few people get to say that they're part of history like that. So
Do you have maybe obviously you wrestled with multiple different people, but is there one person that whose work you really enjoyed working with, that maybe it was in the WWE or maybe in the
um
independent circuit, that whenever you two wrestled it just clicked?
I mean, other than the friends that I mentioned,
Yeah.
and some of that is just for some of that is just for goofing off purposes, but probably my oldest friend in wrestling. He's kind of like a big brother to me. Is a guy by the name of Rocky Romero. He's with
Okay.
New Japan Pro Wrestling. He's kind of transitioned into part-time performer, part-time like administration. He's kind of like really diving into like other facets of the job, like as far as like being in the office and things like that. And we go back, quite a ways, and we've always had this very natural chemistry, not just from the amount of time we've spent together, but I just think from day one that we've always clicked. He's the type of guy I could kind of like, I could get out of the car, walk right through the arena and straight to the ring. If he's in there, we'll be fine. Like
Yeah.
that's he's great in that way. He's always been one of my favorite guys to wrestle.
So you're now working the independent scene right now. Obviously you have you work for multiple different companies.
Yeah.
So what is it like now post WWE? How's the journey post WWE now through your everyday life and work wise? Because you know I've known people that sometimes like they are held to their belief and say WWE is the end all be all. We know that's not really true. Obviously there's life outside. There's plenty of fish in the sea, as some people would say. What's it like post WWE for you? What's the wrestling journey like?
I've like I'm a sports guy, so like it's kind of like if you want to play baseball,
Yeah.
like the I guess the best case scenario, would be to end up in like a Yankee, Red Sox, or a Dodgers uniform. Big market,
Yeah.
huge team, like deep pockets. You're probably going to make a lot of money. Like if you play for one of those teams, like
Yeah.
they're not paying anybody the minimum to play. That's the type of things and there's like, hold on, sorry, I got
No, 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 you're worried. You're good.
I got like a spam call or something right now. So getting into wrestling, it's almost like looking at WWE like they're like the Yankees, they're the
Okay.
Cowboys, they're the Lakers, and so there's a lot of people. A majority of people might kind of go in thinking, well, that's the best case scenario, is to kind of end up with a team like that or that team specifically. And there's merit to that, but then again, Michael Jordan was a bull,
Yeah.
and and Chicago wasn't exactly known as like this great market to play in or a great team to play for.
No.
And it still kind of isn't. The market, yes, but not necessarily the franchise itself. I guess in a way it's sort of like that's a great analogy for what wrestling is with WWE, because a lot of guys break in thinking, well, WWE is really the uniform I want to put on.
For sure.
But there's, especially now, it didn't used to be this way, but now there are so many really great viable companies and places to be. So it's like having a lot of teams that you could play for and do just as well, if not better.
Awesome. So, real quick before we get into the next topic, I just want to go ahead and remind everybody that you are listening to the Critical Condition Sports Podcast. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, and wherever else you get your podcasts from. I am being joined today by former WWE wrestler and current Impact wrestler TJ Perkins. You can follow him on Instagram at Mega TJP. So, TJ, shifting into this now. So, you're a sports fan, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
So big. Okay. So NFL. What's been your biggest takeaway this season?
Well, for me, because I'm a Rams guy, being from LA, and so NFC is really where a lot of my attention is focused.
Yeah.
And it's been such an up and down season as far as like the parity of the records and everything. Like, other than the Saints, which I kind of don't understand how they keep winning. And I hate the Saints.
They played no quarterback this past weekend.
Oh, man. Well, at least it wasn't Denver. That was a whole nother thing. I think they started a wide receiver at quarterback, didn't they? Or a halfback,
yes.
I think.
No, they started a practice squad wide receiver. It was 24 hours notice. They said, all right, you're coming on.
Yeah, it's kind of like I saw in the NHL a couple well, I mean, that kind of happens once a season where they'll like literally sign like a local janitor who plays like men's league hockey because like, say a goalie got hurt or sick and they only ever staff 2 goalies. So if their minor league affiliate can't transfer one, they have to sign somebody to least to suit up just in case they need a backup that night. And they'll have these dudes that are like like they work at Best Buy and they're playing for the St. Louis Blues or something for like one night. It's so crazy.
Yeah, and it's funny. It's funny because actually, did you hear that they wanted to use a coach as a quarterback actually for that game?
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
God, I wonder how the legality of that works.
So the NFL stepped in. The Broncos were trying to get the game rescheduled, and they were trying to, if not try to get their coach to be, the quarterback. Obviously, COVID times, you can't just sign someone because they have to pass COVID testings and everything. So they were trying to get a coach. Now the league stepped in and said no, just because of the fact that if they allowed that, it would give teams a loophole. Like you're only allowed 54 players on on a team, for example. Now, let's hire these 3 coaches, so and so, just in case to have them. And so the league didn't want the teams to start storing players as coaches.
Stocking staff, and because I guess you got coaches like I don't know that McVay is a good example, but like my coach McVay, he's my age basically, so it's like this fool could, if he felt physically able to, he could be playing in the league.
He's got a brilliant mind.
He's not like Belichick or something, but shatter into a million pieces if he gets hit. But yeah, so I mean, looking at the NFC, like the year started, and I was like, as a Rams guy, for example, specifically, I remember thinking, okay, the league started first couple of weeks, I thought, okay, we look okay, and then seeing some teams like pull ahead with their wins, and like Rams would drop a tough one or something like that, and I'd see kind of like a fallback, and I'm like, God, we're starting to fall behind already, and then it's like, just as recently as last week, we were second place in the conference and first in our division. We held the tiebreakers in a lot of important games. I'm like, dude, I never would have guessed that, and then, we were just talking off record right before this, and we dropped one to the 49ers, a 4-6 team, but we just came off of wins over the Seahawks and Bucs, and it's like, how can we beat these guys? We can't beat the 49ers.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
it's like, I feel like it's been like a one of those years. It's kind of up and down, and I'm actually surprised that the Steelers are playing so well. To be honest,
Same.
um, yeah, like to have such a long undefeated run through the season, especially at this stage in like Ben's career. Um, I'm just yeah, I don't know. I just thought that like they didn't look I would have not guessed that from them, but I also wouldn't have guessed it from the Saints to come out like 8-2 or something out of the gate. So like that's pretty big. So mostly I'm just watching the playoff picture start to finally get closer to shaping up, but it's everybody's so tightly packed together that it's like every week, one win and one loss changes everything more so than previous years. I feel like.
Yeah, and you said it best right now. Like we're talking about the Rams. I was talking with my buddy, my last week's guest, Nick Clark. Shout out to him. We were talking about the NFC playoff picture, and like the Rams are a team I really like, but the biggest issue for me is I see a lot of inconsistency. And what do I mean by that? Again, you talked about it. You guys, you beat the Bucs, you beat Seattle. Russell Wilson, is an MVP, candidate, and they beat him.
Yeah.
But then, I think the inconsistency with Jared Goff, sometimes really like makes me question things. Now, obviously, I don't think that he should get benched like some of the people were asking Sean McVay. I think that's just, ridiculous because,
Right.
Jared Goff is a good quarterback. Anyone that wants to deny that, you need to like wake up and watch the games. He's a guy that, is being asked to throw 50 times sometimes. And
yeah, it was shocking.
yeah,
Every analyst in the Bucs game specifically were like, why this guy, Goff threw so many times in that game. He looked like Brady in like '08, that year that it's like
yeah,
they never ran the ball, like no plays they ran the ball.
yeah,
And that's how the Rams looked. And I think too, the other thing is like with his inconsistencies, like a lot of people I think don't, with him in particular, like they don't understand, especially if they're not like, they don't watch a lot of Rams football. He doesn't have an O line
yeah.
to really rely on. He's got a terrible O line.
Yeah,
And they,
especially Andrew Whitworth is gone for the season. I don't know if you knew that.
yeah, and we don't have an everyday running back like Gurley.
No.
So we're a running back by committee. So people, it's kind of like the last season with Gurley, where teams knew that his leg was done, so they never even guessed the run game. They just knew Goff was going to drop back and throw
Yeah,
every time. So it was hard for Goff to get a rhythm. And now that we don't even have a guy to bluff with, we just have three guys that are trying to do the job of one guy. So, and then in games like with the Bucs, like Tampa has a good team on both sides of the ball. And Goff looked excellent with a bad O-line, with a bad running, not a bad running game, but like,
average.
a not well put together
Yeah,
running game. And he looked great. And then there's other teams that don't have as good a defenses, don't have as good a pass rushing, and don't even have very good offensive support either. And the Rams struggle to score, and we struggle to stop them, and it's really weird, I don't feel like it's inconsistency just on Goff's part. I just feel like the team doesn't perform. Like I feel like the
yeah,
team like treats a lot. I feel like every other game becomes a trap game for them.
definitely. Now, my concern is for the Rams watching Jared Goff. Protection. It's all in protection, obviously.
Yeah,
It's naive not to think that, quarterbacks that don't have a good offensive line shouldn't be blamed for that. I mean, I think that it's a team sport. Football is a team sport. And if you're not protecting your quarterback, he's going to get real inconsistent easily, on throws. Obviously, he's going to start
right.
overthinking
Yeah,
things. He's going to start to try to fit them in tight spaces. And I feel like that's what happened in the 49er game. I feel like, obviously, Whitworth is gone. He's out for the year, and that's a huge hit for them. That's their best offensive lineman. And he's,
yeah,
36, 37, 38. He's up there in age already
yeah.
for,
Huge
a
locker room
lineman.
presence too. Yeah,
Yeah, and he's their leader. So obviously, seeing the first 2-3 plays of that game, I'm like, oh, okay, well they're hitting him, and he's getting uncomfortable. It's gonna be a long day. But they almost won that game. Goff, turned the ball over a couple times, but they almost won that game. So I don't think like all hope is lost. I feel like the Rams are going to be in the playoffs. At the end of the day, I like the Rams. I like them to get to maybe a divisional round. But I
And
feel
that
like
extra wild card spot makes
yeah,
it really interesting too, like so
it
now
does.
now there's like, whereas a year ago, I mean last year or whatever, like you'd have, however many teams sitting on the bubble. Now it's like twice as many just
Yeah,
off of that one extra spot and how close the records are this year.
yeah, and if the Rams, obviously, it's going to be based on matchup because we know NFC East is trash. We
Oh
know that.
yeah,
We
yeah.
know that. So if the Rams draw a team like that, I mean, they're going to win, in my opinion. I feel like the Rams match up well against the Packers. I feel like they can win that game too, just because
Mm,
the defense is the story for this team right now. The defense is playing solid for the Rams, and if your Aaron Rodgers gets really uncomfortable when you start pressuring them and beating up that run game and beating up the receivers, obviously Jalen Ramsey and Aaron Donald are great for that. So I feel like the Rams can get to a divisional playoff spot. I'm not gonna say it's easy. I feel like they can definitely win the games to be able to put themselves in position there. But I feel like
yeah,
that's as far as they'll get. What do you think, TJ? How far do you see this team going?
I think that I think that's a good assessment as far as thinking about favorable matchups.
Yeah.
I I think they match up decently well with, I guess, any other team than the 49ers for some reason.
Yeah.
I feel like the Seahawks should be a tough matchup for them. Um, but we've been, I don't know, we're like the 49ers for the Seahawks for some reason. Like they struggle with us. I don't know why Russell Wilson does, but he does.
Yeah.
Um, I feel like they are a good matchup for Green Bay. I feel like it's a sort of a 50-50 game with the Saints, and mostly because like with Drew Brees and all that, like with those issues, I feel like, and now having like Jalen Ramsey in our secondary and Donald still on point up front, like defensively, we're a good matchup for the Saints running game and whatever they might get going in the air.
Yeah.
But I feel like the Saints defense is tough for us and with like a bad O line and all that. So it would sort of be like, okay, who can crack the egg first a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, and like I don't see that being like a shootout sort of game,
No.
unless the defense is just flat out give
Relax.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're just like, screw it, we're just playing Chiefs football now. Like it's just who's going to score more. Like, um, so it's weird. I feel like the deeper they would get in the playoffs, the better matchups they would be. I
Yeah.
feel like I feel like first round would be the worst round for them because I don't know who they'll play. But
Yeah.
like I feel like if they can get past a whatever matchup in the first round, which seems to be what they struggle with. They struggle with games where they should win.
Yeah. Definitely.
Like I felt like they should have won that Bills game in week 2 or whatever it
It
was.
was week 3. Yeah. They lost like
Yeah,
35-32. It was an insane game.
yeah, and they yeah. I mean, they literally they let Allen uh, drive like with 30 seconds left. I couldn't like it was they should have won that game.
Definitely.
And they should have won the Niners games, I think, but then they win games where you kind of feel like it might be a struggle for them. So I feel like getting past the first round, maybe they look better as they go because I do think they match up well with the more difficult teams in the
Yeah.
conference for whatever reason. I don't know. Um, on the flip side, flipping conferences, it's weird. I sort of feel like the Steelers, even, and this might be like a weird example because it's like it's another Rams example, but like the
Yeah.
year that the Rams held out with such a strong record toward till the end, they ended up going to the Super Bowl with the Patriots, but everybody attributed to, well, maybe it's just because strength of schedule, the Rams lucked out that year.
Yeah.
And to a certain point, that's probably why they finished with such a great schedule, even though they still won it when it counts in the playoffs and still made it, to the dance. But I feel like maybe the Steelers won't look like the regular season Steelers in the playoffs.
I agree.
And I feel like Kansas City is still just the juggernaut. Like, I mean, that's their conference to lose. I don't think, like, Mahomes is the best player in football. I mean, he really is. It's just like,
Phenomenal.
and that team, and being like my family's from Kansas City, so I've watched them build that team slowly over the last 5-6, years. and watching guys like Kelsey come in and start to play better and getting all those different pieces in place, and like they just look so good. I feel like come playoff time, the Steelers are not going to look like this team that they are. They're going to kind of play more human, I guess. I feel
agree.
like.
I agree. Their strength of schedule is on the easier side, and this team, like, to me, in my opinion, obviously Super Bowl, I think we can agree on, it's going to be Chiefs versus whatever team makes it out of the NFC. The Chiefs are guaranteed, in my opinion, to come out of the Super Bowl. I mean, to
And
go into the Super Bowl.
I do kind of like the Bucs coming out of the NFC. Like I really do feel like if the team gets a rhythm to close out the season, and especially with a few more weeks for them to kind of mix in with Brady more, and with Brady's mentality heading into that part of the year, and that's just his time, and they look better every week. I remember the start of the season, everybody's like, oh God, how's this team going to look? And every week it went from 50-50 to, they're like 60-40, they're like 70-30. And then it was like, wow, this team's really good.
Yeah.
And that's a rapid development, for a quarterback that's never played in a different system or ever put on a different uniform. And, a quarterback whose head coach is like, those are two very strong personalities in their respective fields, and to sort of acquire all this new stuff with the exception of Gronk, and now to add AB to it and everything, like I do really like the Bucs kind of coming out of the NFC.
So
I
that
feel like
loss doesn't scare you? The one
not
against
really.
Kansas City?
No, I don't think so. I mean, well, I like them coming out of the NFC. I don't know. I don't know that I like the matchup if they play Kansas City in the Super Bowl. I just think that coming out of the NFC, I like Brady and the Bucs more so than, say, Packers, Saints, Rams, like that. Maybe Russell Wilson, the Seahawks kind of turn it on. They have that they have a lot of time together, and Wilson's done this before, and he's having an MVP year. He should be the MVP. He should be.
Yes,
I don't think nobody means more to his team than him, except for Mahomes, I guess, but I feel like he's working with less. So I feel like unless they fall apart completely, it should be Wilson.
Yeah, I think the thing that affected Seattle last year, without a doubt, was the injuries. They lost. They were down to the fourth-string running back. They had to get Marshawn to come out, and we hadn't seen him. It was years since we saw Marshawn, playing a football game. So that's a concern. I'll take the Bucs over the Packers. I'll take them over the Saints just because Drew, obviously it hasn't been all his fault, but last year, the Saints, in my opinion, they lost that game to Minnesota because of Drew. That costly, he fumbled at a very costly time, and it's just been terrible luck for the Saints. We saw the Minnesota Miracle. Obviously, we saw that little call against, the Rams, that wasn't called, pass interference, whatever people want to say. I feel like their time has passed. I feel like I don't think the Saints are going to make a lot of noise.
Oh, I feel like they're 1 year away from a rebuild.
Yeah, definitely. Drew Brees going to retire. It's been assumed that he's going to retire this year. There are stories that he had to get talked back into coming in for one more season, and he's getting hurt.
Thomas will probably want out.
I
feel like Thomas will probably want out. Obviously, he's there's been whatever. I mean, I don't know. They don't publicize it enough or not enough. I mean, it doesn't matter if they do or not. But obviously there's some chemistry issues and personality issues with him and other teammates and stuff like that. So that team, I like, they're sort of like the Clippers of the NFL right now.
The Saints?
The Saints. Yeah. They were built to win. They're close. They can't really get it together. They have a little bit of turnover, stay in the dance a little bit longer, but it's now they're getting to this point where it's sort of win or bust because the time's up,
Yeah, and the Bucs, very concerned on the Bucs when it comes to the coaching side. Bruce Arians has made some questionable calls. They're really effective when they're running the football. Now, that loss to Kansas City with me, it makes me feel a little bit uneasy going with the Bucs. Does that kind of maybe shift your way of thinking though after seeing them? It really was kind of a beatdown. Obviously, I don't know what happened to the play calling for Kansas City, but the Bucs were able to come back. Are you not concerned with Brady then watching him in that kind of game? Because I don't know if you saw this, TJ, but the Bucs are 1-3 in prime time.
Right. I don't. I mean, the the I feel like the primetime record doesn't really, the context of that doesn't necessarily, it's not that heavy.
Okay.
I would say it's concerning to see them drop a loss like that, but against Kansas City, I don't know. I mean, that's kind of hard to hang that one on them too much. And
Yeah,
people got to remember that I think that they're overachieving this year, having a winning record with, a new quarterback. Sure, it's Brady, but he's never played outside of New England. He's never
for sure.
played for a different coach, and there's a lot of new things about Tampa Bay to go from what they were to now, like they're a top NFC team. I feel like we lose sight of the fact that that's overachieving for them.
Okay.
And I don't know. I kind of think of it like, a few years back, like I went to the Monday Night Football game that was Chiefs Rams, right?
Oh my, you went to that
And
one?
greatest game I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
And Rams beat the Chiefs. And I don't think if you were to look at that, if you would have said, does that concern you as like a Chiefs fan that they would lose to the Rams? Like in that way after such a shootout and et cetera, et cetera. It's like if you score that much on the Rams, you should be able to beat them because technically you're beating the defense, which is really what the Rams
Yeah.
are, especially that year. That was their strong suit, relying on Donald, relying
Yeah.
on like Peters and Talib and the defense. Like people didn't trust Goff yet. The receiving core were still like kind of newer, younger guys.
Yeah.
I don't remember if Cup was hurt already or not,
Cup
but
was Cup. He was hurt. He was hurt that year.
yeah.
He tore his
So
ACL.
it's like you figure if you're going to beat them in a shootout and if you're the Chiefs, you should win that game. So, but I feel like if we were to look at that as an indictment on the Chiefs, that would have kind of lacked a lot of context because the Rams inevitably became a Super Bowl team.
Yes.
The Chiefs would have been a Super Bowl team. And, in the long run, that game was sort of like it didn't really matter one way or another. It just ended up being this amazing game. I sort of feel like the Bucs Chiefs, that's what I think of is like, I think at the time in a bubble, it feels like, oh, fuck, this looks really bad.
Yeah.
But I think when you consider that they are overachieving this year and there are going to be games like that where they show their age as far as like gelling together. And, you see how they're still performing within their conferences and stuff like that. Bucks not as good as the Chiefs, but still, considered a strong NFC team. It doesn't really scare me that much.
Okay.
Mostly because we just, we've only seen 10 weeks of the Bucks or whatever. Like it's not.
Yeah. Now
it's not a lot.
The coaching though still gives me cause to pause. Brady's throwing a lot of picks. More, and when I say a lot of picks, I don't want to blow this out of proportion. He's throwing more picks than he's on rate to have the most picks he's ever thrown in his career.
Yeah.
Bruce Arians is very loose. The last 3 quarterbacks that he coached, they've hit career highs with interceptions thrown. So now when it comes to the coaching, TJ, are you concerned in that area? Because they didn't really adjust. Now, I don't know what happened with Kansas City. I feel like they kind of got a little more lax and they, took the foot off the pedal because Tyreek Hill had 203 yards receiving, in the first quarter. That was insane. Now, are you concerned though with, Bruce Arians and kind of the attitude, maybe throwing Brady under the bus? Are you concerned about the chemistry this team is going to build in the coming weeks though?
Yeah, I actually had been thinking that since week 1, 2, and 3 that I feel like the inevitable next step is to swap Arians out. Like I feel like that's what Tampa Bay will do because like he does hang Brady out to dry a lot. And I feel like you could kind of see that Brady's being the one to say, okay, I'm going to play your offense and I'm going to do it your way. And he'll throw more picks than usual. He'll get sacked more than usual. You could see it on his face too. Like he wants, it's like you could see it in his eyes that he's like, please run this route this way, not that guy's way. Please do this instead of that. Please protect me like this instead of that. And like, instead he just takes it. And So we're seeing a more human Brady this year, but I feel like he's trying to do what I feel like people wouldn't have expected him to do and say, okay, I'm going to play Arians
Yeah.
football. And I feel like Bruce doesn't bend for him enough to be
No, I agree with you.
like you have probably the greatest quarterback of all time who still can play the game, and you're not trying to really build it around him enough, like I don't think I do think that that's sort of the inevitable end of this if they don't end up making a deep run or like a Super Bowl appearance. I'm not saying they got to win, but I feel like if they don't at least get to the dance, and if they get to a certain point, and depending on how the losses and whatever the final loss is looks, if you're Tampa Bay's administration, you got to say, look, we clearly are on the cusp, or we have the pieces to do it, but this guy's got to go.
Definitely, I agree with you on that. I think
Yeah.
he's very loose. He's very loose with his play calling, and I feel I'm not gonna say I feel bad for Brady, but he's getting to see what the rest of the league that's not the New England Patriots has to deal with. Belichick is the master in details, and overall, they play very clean over there in New England. Obviously, this season hasn't gone, to the Patriot standard or the Patriot way and how it's going there. So, TJ, uh, talking about Cam, you didn't think there was a better option. Completely agree with you on that. Jared Stidham, I didn't buy into the whole hype. I think all season long people were saying Jared Stidham's a guy. He's doing phenomenal. I get it. People are going to talk up, their own player, but I never really bought into it. So I do agree with you. Do you think the Patriots make the playoffs this season?
I don't know.
It's a tough one.
Yeah, I mean, the way they look, I could see them kind of falling off the final weeks.
Yeah.
And I sort of feel like, not that they would want to do it on purpose or anything like they're thinking tank, and not that obviously Belichick would never, that's not the organization that would ever do that. But I sort of feel like, in regards to like Cam having been the best possible scenario for them this year anyway, I feel like whatever long-term scenario is right for them would be to acquire like a quarterback for the future that's like, more of a, for sure he's going to be a viable guy, like a Joe Burrows or something,
Yeah.
like, and they're really only going to do that by being a bad team and being able to draft or offload assets and acquire that,
Definitely, I agree with you.
So I feel like, not that they want to fall off, but I feel like that's sort of where the stars are aligned for them, is they kind of have to fall off a little bit.
Definitely. Think of the future, right?
Yeah.
So I was under the impression that they were going to tank. Maybe not say like on purpose. I just didn't feel like this roster is very talented to be able to win, those tight games.
Yeah.
And I thought, obviously, my prediction was 5-11. They've already won 5 games. I think they'll win maybe 1, 2 more. I think they'll beat the Chargers. They play the Chargers upcoming week, and Belichick just feasts on young quarterbacks, especially, first, second-year quarterbacks. We saw what he did to Kyler Murray. He completely shut him down. So I think they'll win another 2 games. So, I was wrong on that prediction. I would like them to try to go for, a Justin Fields or, a Trey Lance, one of those quarterbacks coming out of college this season. They're not going to get Trevor. New York's going to get Trevor. I'm over it. I really wanted Trevor with the Pats, but I'm over that. Dude, I'm so over that. There's no way New York's going to win, no 2 games. I don't think they win a game, but, I definitely don't see them winning 2. So
it's funny, like,
yeah,
it seemed like, I mean, I guess Castle didn't end up being like this big, transitional star getting out of New England or anything, but it seemed like New England always had this like great like backup scenario where they always had like this like should be starter guy behind Brady.
Yeah.
And then it's like, Castle filled in the 1 year and he looks like he should be a starting quarterback, like, and just never panned out. But he moved on, and then, then there was like Garoppolo and stuff like that. And it's like, yeah. So it's so funny that I feel like it's very ironic that like all those years where it's like, they're not going to part. Yeah. They're not going to part with Brady. They're not going to part with Brady, but they have this, they're not going to part with Brady. And then Brady does move on and they don't have that Garoppolo in, it's waiting,
Yeah,
like,
definitely. And people were going crazy over Jared Stidham. I like Jared Stidham coming out of Auburn. I like to watch a lot of college football, and obviously it's fun to assess quarterbacks coming out of college. Jared Stidham wasn't the guy. He looked good his junior year, and then his senior year he fell off. And I told myself, okay, well, Belichick, if Belichick truly believed in this guy, he wouldn't have signed Cam. If I'm happy with this guy, I don't think so. I think Cam was a wise investment. You got a former NFL MVP who's been to the big dance, like you said, for $1 million, pretty much. So I think it was a good move by them. So shifting to the next question for you, the way to fix the Dallas Cowboys, in your opinion, is to fill that in for me.
Well, I don't know. This is probably an unpopular opinion because anytime have I especially when we do like sports combos in the locker room, nobody really feels this way, I think. But I feel like Jerry Jones and the team sort of lets great players get away, and they don't solve whatever they need to solve to hang on to them. Like, I would have liked to have seen Dez stay with the team longer. Obviously, you need to make sure Dak doesn't get hurt. That's a pretty big one. I guess Zeke is, he's still playing. Everything's fine. But I sort of feel like, I don't know. I mean, maybe they form a new identity through their defense, because I feel like, how do you not, their offense had every problem solved at every position. Yes. I think Dak is a great quarterback to have. He's mobile. He's dynamic. He's, at times he kind of feels like he's like Mahomes light,
Okay.
Especially when he's playing loose and he's having fun. He just looks like he's playing schoolyard football, and it's great. I felt like they've had some good receivers come in. I mean, Cooper, I don't know why it feels like he's not very well this year, but between Bryant and Cooper and then having Zeke in the backfield, and it's you don't have a problem on offense. But the Cowboys as a glamour franchise has always been, you think Aikman, you think Smith, you think Michael Irvin, and
prime time when he was there.
Yes, you with the exception of Dion, who played two ways, so it's okay, he was still an offensive player. It's a franchise's identity is, they get their identity through the offensive side of the ball, and I sort of feel like they've checked off all those boxes the last few years with guys that they've had in and out of the rotating door of those positions.
Yes.
Not all of them are rotating. I mean, Dak's still there technically, Zeke's still there, but I feel like maybe it's just time for them to form a new identity. Maybe they need to become a defensive team, I don't know what it is. And I don't know, this is some sort of a cursed division. And I saw a graphic that they put up during the Monday night game or the Sunday night game. And they were talking about they haven't had a repeat division winner in 20 years.
Yeah,
or something.
20 years.
It's how do you that is such a weird division. I just don't get it,
Definitely.
The Eagles went to the Super Bowl just a few years ago.
Yeah, they won.
Yeah, it's with their backup quarterback.
Don't remind me about that game, man. Oh my god, it hurt. I'm a Pats fan, so it definitely hurt. It stung a different kind.
Oh yeah, I hated to see the Eagles. I can't stand the Eagles, and Brady's always been my favorite player. So, I would have liked to see the Pats win that one, but yeah, it's just such a weird division. I don't know. It just feels it's a cursed division. I don't get it. Giants won 2 Super Bowls
with Eli against the Pats.
Every other year they're dog crap. I don't get how do you win a Super Bowl, 2 Super Bowls, and then you look like that? I don't get it. These franchises just they can't get it together. I don't know what it is. With the Cowboys, I feel like they just need an identity change. They're not. The Pats took over the idea of what a glamour franchise is for the NFL. If you try to say to a kid now, that's 25 years or younger, you try to tell him, like the analogy I use with wrestling. If you get into wrestling, you want to go to WWE, for example. If you play if you get into baseball, you want to play for the Yankees.
Yeah.
So the old analogy used to be when I was growing up, I don't know how old you are, but like when I was growing up, if you got into football, you want to play for the Cowboys. It was America's team. That was the glamour franchise. They were Lakers, you know?
Yeah, my dad would say it all the time.
Yeah. And that's, to me, that's still what, like, it was that perception for so long that to me, that's still what it is. But I feel like now that they're not that anymore. And that was based on a history of great quarterbacks and being great on the offensive side of the ball, you know, Aikman, Staubach, like it was a glamour franchise on offense. And I feel like having a new identity and not trying to, and I respect Jerry Jones's probably ideology on that is like, no, we can pull this off. We're the Cowboys. Let's just get great guys at these positions. And they do, but I think this is the first time in history for them anyway, that they've had a good quarterback now. They've had a good running back. They've had good receivers, and they're not what they were in the 90s and the 80s and all that. Like they need a new, I think they need a new identity, you know?
No, nowhere near that. I feel like the team started going south when Jerry started paying, you know, all these players early. Now, the Ezekiel Elliott story, oh my goodness, it was the only thing we were talking about that offseason, you know, especially if you're playing fantasy football. Hey, is he going to sign? Is he going to sign? Or is he going to hold out? Because, you know, it was a year after the whole Le'Veon, you know, wanted a deal and he sat out the whole year. Fantasy football owners were, you know, upset. So people were like, that was the story we heard. And I was telling people at that time, if I were Jerry Jones, I would have traded away Zeke. You could have got a first rounder. You could have gotten a good haul. I'm not going to say no Herschel Walker trade haul, but you could have gotten a good haul for him. I think Houston, you know, needed a running back. They would have given you something for him. And instead, you know, they overpaid him. They paid him, you know, top 3 running back money. And, you know, they didn't pay their quarterback. You know, again, what was the biggest story this offseason? Is Dak going to get a new contract? And regardless of how much they pay him, obviously, I feel like Dak is going to be the quarterback of the future for the Dallas Cowboys. I feel like it'd be very hard for them to move off him. I think they're going to pay him. Question is the number, for sure. But Zeke is becoming a problem for this team. And I understand that the O-line is deteriorating because, you know, plenty of injuries. They've already lost 3 to 4 starters on there. But Zeke, ever since Dak got hurt, and it's something that surprised me a lot, that Zeke's play has gone way down without Dak. And it's funny because people were saying, you know, Dak needs Zeke, but now, you know, Dak's out and Zeke's struggling. So it really,
well, I mean, I think that in that case, like the context of that, 'cause football is such a unique game on the offensive side of the ball. Like, I mean, you're really playing 2 positions there.
Okay.
You're playing cornerback and you're playing running back. And like, I think unless you're a generational talent like Mahomes. Tom Brady, for example, right? Or Mahomes, great example too. Like, there's so few guys, a handful of guys in history that can make anything work, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
You know, like you're talking like a Marino, a Brady, you know, a Mahomes. Like, I mean, just like you hand this guy the football, he'll make, you know, like I used to joke with guys like Brady's making like junior college guys into NFL receivers. 'Cause like some of these guys they didn't even look like they should be NFL receivers until they played with Brady. And then after playing with Brady, they did not look like NFL receivers either, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
And I feel like in the case with Dak and Zeke, it's almost like with Goff and Gurley. You know, once teams knew that Gurley had a bum leg, Goff was dead in the water. And a lot of people, sometimes they think, well, that should open up the door for Goff. No, because now defenses know there's only one way they can go.
Yeah, you're just going to throw the football.
Yeah, if you're sitting there behind the line and you're thinking, all right, they're either going to go left or they're going to go right. Yeah. If you know they can't go right, you know they're going left. Like, so if you know that they don't have anything in the air,
you're gonna stack the box.
You are going to stuff that running back to hell. And that's just, you know, I feel like that's maybe not the entire story with Zeke, but I definitely think that is going to be a factor because they know that whoever's dropping back for the Cowboys is not going to be playing for Dak. They're not really going to be playing for Dak. They're putting on a uniform because they have to.
Yeah, fill a spot, definitely. Ben DiNucci over there on Sunday Night Football. Oh my goodness, that was ridiculous. You want to know a fun fact though, TJ? So we talk about, the NFC East. It's trash, and there's only been 2 other teams that have won a division without a winning record. It was Seattle and it was Carolina. Those teams went on to win a playoff game. They're 1-0 in the first round of the playoffs. So how insane would it be if you had New York? I don't think Philly's going to go. I think Carson Wentz is struggling a lot right now.
Yeah.
But how insane would it be for like Washington or, New York to go in there and beat the Rams or beat Seattle, man? I'm gonna lose it. I think a lot of people would lose. I'd be like, dude, no way in hell. That'd be the reaction. Like, no way in hell. I joke
people are already mad that they eat up a playoffs position.
Definitely. I feel like they should rethink the whole seeding process for these teams. What would be the Super Bowl matchup you'd want to see? Mine would be Kansas City versus Seattle.
I think Kansas City, Seattle would be fun. I'd like to see Kansas City, Tampa Bay, just because it's a good enough year for the Bucs and Brady that I wouldn't feel like they cheated anybody in the NFC by making it to the Super Bowl. And I think that the narrative of Brady going to the Super Bowl without the Patriots is incredible.
Oh, it'd be a crazy storyline.
Yeah, so the fact that they're close enough to do it, that's sort of the one I'm rooting for. Because if they were headed for like a 9-7 record or like a 10-6, then I wouldn't be thinking, oh, I hope they make the Super Bowl, because it's like, well, no, because then there's obviously going to be better teams that should be playing. Yeah, like a Green Bay probably, obviously, and New Orleans and teams that are dominating the regular season. You kind of feel like, well, I don't want to root for them in that position, but the fact that they've looked so strong getting through the middle weeks now, like if they finish strong, then that's kind of the matchup I want to see just for the narrative alone.
For sure. So shifting to this portion of it, talk about good stories. The Lakers, great story this past season. Unfortunately, the tragic, loss of Kobe Bryant, one of the, the all-time greats. And then, COVID and the NBA season, like every other business, halting for the most part. They have the bubble, they're forced to stay in a bubble for, months. And the Lakers are able to hold a championship up. It was a great story, a tragic loss. I feel like it was a good story for them. LeBron winning another championship. He's, in my opinion, the greatest basketball player on the planet, sorry. And they look great. And now you look at all these additions, Montrezl Harrell, Wesley Matthews, and there, Dennis Schroeder. This team looks like they're perennial and favored to go all the way again. Do you agree or disagree?
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. I think more so this year than last year, to be honest.
Definitely.
Not just because of their additions, but because of subtractions of other teams. Definitely. I feel like last year you think, obviously the white elephant in the room opposite the Lakers is the Clippers.
Yes.
And I think that they're falling apart,
Definitely.
And so, not just with the coaching turnover, but, like half the team, more 3/4 of the team do not want it out because they don't get along with Leonard and George.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they're kicking themselves now, giving up all those draft picks for George.
For sure.
I thought that they should have said, talk Doc into staying and traded George to get some assets back.
Completely agree with you.
Just because it's like, if you hang on to Kawhi, you don't want to get rid of them both. I get, but if it means that 3 or 4 other impact players, you're talking Pat Bev, Montrez, like half that bench, they didn't want to play with Paul George anymore. Like,
definitely.
You hear the reports that like they're rolling their eyes at him during, team meetings when he's giving captains, speeches and stuff. They don't even respect the guy. You're going to lose all those, and all those guys aren't easy pickups either. Like trying to get a team full of, trying to get a team with like Lou Will and Montrez and Pat Bev, like
just getting depth.
Just getting that together is hard.
Definitely.
So if you're looking at, if I'm Ballmer and the GM staff, and I'm looking at this, I'm like, these guys all want out because of this guy, and we may or may not need to turn over on our coat. Like, can we just talk all of them into staying and just trade this guy and get some of the assets back? Because we gave up a crap load of first rounders. We probably should.
5. It was 5, I believe.
Yeah, that's insane. And so I feel like that's what they should have done. But they obviously don't look good in this offseason. The Lakers, I think, look better. Phoenix looks amazing. I just wonder how good they'll look 1 year into this, like coming right out the gate, and with like no off season really and no camp, like they're going to have to get that together real fast, but they look great.
Chris Paul.
Yeah. And I wish there was a way for the Lakers to have gotten the salary to match for Chris Paul, but that just was never going to happen. But the Warriors are a mixed bag for me. And otherwise, with Houston falling apart, unless Portland looks as good as they did to close out the season last year, I don't see anybody in the West coming out strong.
The Mavs are young.
Say again.
The Mavs are young still.
So
Luka's still young.
Yeah, Luka, I feel like is for sure a near future MVP. He's amazing. He'll probably be the best player in the league in 5 years.
Definitely.
Like he's incredible. But I feel like the Warriors, I don't know, one, I've never been sold on Steph.
Never.
And the reason being is because before they built such depth around him, Steph was not he wasn't even a surefire all-star. He was a good player, great shooter, but he had trouble staying healthy when he had to have high usage. Correct. When he couldn't share the ball, he had trouble staying healthy, and he wasn't dropping 30 and 40 burgers on people. I think people look at that through rose-colored glasses, like his 2015, 16, 17 seasons. He wasn't doing that in 12, 13, 14.
No, he wasn't.
Before the year where they really had Clay, Dre, and him together, and they made the playoffs and it looked like a really good playoff team. Before that, he had only had one 40-point game ever, and only a handful of 30-point games. He didn't do it a lot, and he had trouble staying healthy, and he's not particularly strong on defense, and he doesn't particularly finish at the rim that well either. So outside of needing space to clear up a shot, he doesn't bring a lot of what, say, a Damian Lillard or a Russell Westbrook bring to the table, And I felt like with the way that they finished after last year and or the year before and transitioning into last year, Katie obviously gone, Clay hurt, Dre is still there, but Iggy's gone too. Other parts that were kind of low-key parts of their depth, Livingston and guys like that, they're gone, McGee's gone, stuff like that, little things that made the game a lot easier for Steph. And he kind of looked like the old Steph coming out. He got hurt in the first week of the season. He wasn't this 34. People thought, with KD gone and Clay hurt, Steph is going to go nuts, and he didn't. No. He was 20. He was 25 point per game, maybe. Playing through that first week, and I feel like that's really what Steph is without all that.
I agree.
Which isn't to say it's bad. I just don't think he's this world beater that people thought he was for 3 years. I think that when you have that many guys on the court and you have this deadly shooter who's the face of the franchise because he's been there the longest, he's going to look great. But I feel like what's the difference between him and Trae Young? So Trae Young looks like a 2014 and 15 Steph on the Hawks. He doesn't have a Clay. He doesn't have a Draymond. Yeah. And so I don't know, without Clay being healthy, and I've heard about this Harden trade that they seemingly are close to being able to make it work. I don't know, without Clay being healthy, how the Warriors really look, to be honest.
Yeah, and I agree with you in that sense, TJ, especially when, again, to the previous conversation right now that we had, if, you have Dak and Zeke and you don't have Dak anymore. So what are you going to do? D up on Zeke. So now Steph's by himself. Draymond, let's be honest, not a real threat shooting the basketball. And, there's no Clay there. There's no KD. Obviously, their center situation, was a revolving door in that sense. So who's going to shoot the ball? Where are you going to get your offense from? And, all the attention goes to Steph. So I can see what your point on that.
And, and the thing is, a lot of the way they would try and use Steph, the last few years was try to move him off ball.
Yeah.
He would dominate the ball and play point guard, but you could move him off ball and have, especially with Clay and Iggy on the court. And then when they added Durant, now he can kind of become this spot up shooter where he can start to really kind of pad what people thought these were like world beating stats, but like you said, like you have to sort of respect the offense when there's that many people on the court, like if you want to stop Steph from scoring 40 points, you double him with who? Clay's guy? Then Clay's going to score 40 points.
Yeah, then he's going to go nuclear on you.
Yeah, do you take KD's guy off? KD's probably the best player in basketball when he's healthy.
Yeah.
He's going to score 60 on you. He's going to score 60 on you if you double team him. Like,
yeah.
So you're not taking KD's guy off. You're not taking Clay's guy off. You're not going to double him with the center who can't keep up with Steph. There's really no way to stop that, and when Iggy was playing, obviously Iggy came off the bench, but when he was playing the middle minutes and the late minutes with the starting squad, like you're not going to take Iggy's guy off to put him on Steph, and you're not going to take Draymond's guy off to play on Steph either. No. Like that. So it's the context matters. And of course now you can zero in on them. And I think that's, they're not going to be the same. They're never going to be the same Warriors again.
No, I think it's pretty much over. I felt really bad when I saw, the Clay injury, just because, I am a fan of Clay. I think he's phenomenal. I think he's a great shooter and can play defense.
I was honestly hoping for him to get out of Golden State because I feel like he should be a superstar.
Yeah.
And him and Steph are still close enough in career age that he'll never really be that for Golden State.
Yeah.
Because Steph isn't going to be gone until Clay's already winding down. Now it's kind of rough because you wonder now is Clay pretty much winding down now because he kind of you wonder if he has to.
Yeah, 2 major injuries.
So I had kind of hoped the last few years because you would hear like, oh, maybe Clay's on the block because he's really too valuable to be keeping around and also get paid. And if they are tight on money, maybe he's the asset that goes. Because him and Steph kind of do the same thing. So a lot of times you would hear, oh, for sure, they keep KD, they keep Dre, they keep Iggy, you ship Clay.
Yeah.
That was like the trade 101 scenario for the Golden State Warriors for the last 3 years.
Definitely.
I was always hoping that he would go or sign elsewhere when he was up, just because I thought, man, Lakers would be cool because of Michael Thompson, obviously. But I always just thought he's the type of guy that he should be the face of a franchise. He's incredible. I think he's better than Steph. He does more than Steph does. He's bigger than Steph. He's as good of a shooter. He can finish at the rim better. He plays defense better.
Definitely.
He's stronger. He's just not a point guard,
Do you believe that, and I feel like all dynasties, whether you want to go with the Spurs, Warriors, Pats, Cowboys, they've all gotten some sort of lucky breaks and luck into it. Do you feel like it was more luck for the Warriors, in your opinion, than it was like as to how dominant, like truly this team was? By luck, I mean Steph getting hurt and, being able to afford other guys like Kevin Durant for this team.
Yeah, I really think it was what year was it that they had a cap jump? It was a massive cap jump.
I think
in fact, I think it was 2 years in a row, right?
Yeah, and I think it was when Steph got hurt, so they didn't have to pay him a whole lot of money because the value wasn't there. So then you could pay Clay, but Clay, I believe, was on a rookie deal, and then obviously years go by and you're able to afford Kevin Durant because obviously you haven't been spending so much money on these guys. Yeah, that there's a little bit of luck there. I feel like that injury, in a sense, not saying that the Warriors wanted him to get hurt, but there's a little bit of luck there because as far as the leverage there and the money you had, I feel like that went a long way to creating this Warriors dynasty.
Well, like I kind of compare it to the Showtime Lakers, for example. Yeah. Like they were a good team that ended up with a number 1 draft pick. They drafted Magic. Yes. And they're fresh off of multiple NBA Finals appearances, and they have another number 1 draft pick. They get James Worthy. So not only are they drafting high for like a winning team, which is ridiculous, but they ended up drafting 2 guys who are the greatest, like some of the greatest players of all time, and which is incredible luck that they panned out, For sure. So I feel like with the Warriors, the fact that Dre turned out to be an all-star caliber player, Clay probably is the best player they've had other than KD.
Yeah.
And they started with Steph, and to have Steph, Clay, Dre come within like a 4-year span of each other, like a 5-year span, 2 of them on rookie deals, and 2 of them on rookie deals when I think there was a year where the cap jumped. And that's like how the Lakers, they're still getting screwed on Deng's contract, because when the cap jumped, Jim Buss was like, he made a fake splash by signing Mozgov and Deng to these massive deals.
Massive contracts.
Because they were like, well, like, screw it. The cap went up way high. Let's just pay them massive amounts of money.
It's still on the books.
Right. So but on the flip side, when you look back, and a lot of people like a lot of sports fans who don't really look at the money side of it, like for the Warriors, they had 2 All-Stars on rookie deals, a 3rd All-Star in Steph, who's the only one you're really paying.
Yeah.
And then the cap jumps. That's your entire bench, and then eventually KD. Like,
for sure.
That'll never happen again. It'll literally never happen again. Like, even in the future, if like the cap jumps a massive jump and everybody all of a sudden has the spending power, you still have to have just recently signed 2 rookies who are all-stars and still on rookie deals. Like that, the chances of that happening are
slim nowadays to none.
It is like less than 0. It is so small.
For sure. And I mean, kudos to them, obviously. And then they go to the finals, and then, they're playing LeBron and Matthew Dellavedova. So obviously, they should win that series. It sucked for LeBron. But now, I'm happy to see LeBron finally get like a solid, like legit supporting cast now.
Yeah.
And, again, I thought the Warriors were going to be a threat. Now I feel like this is pretty wide open for the Lakers. It's pretty, their path to a championship is pretty clear there. Now, going into like Brooklyn and KD and the Nets, what do you think about the East? I feel like the Nets, it's one of those teams that, it sells movie tickets, but is the movie going to be good? KD and Kyrie, it does. Yeah. It does. Kyrie, though, we know the history of Kyrie and some of the issues he's had. Are you worried about, the whole Kyrie and KD thing working out? Because some of the people that really complain about Kyrie, he's, not a locker room guy, quote unquote, is what some of the reports have said. Do you think this Nets team can make it to a finals?
So when I look opposite the West, the West, obviously, like we were saying, it's like feels wide open for the Lakers. But all the other great teams got worse or are a mess. Houston's falling apart. Clippers are kind of falling apart. Warriors look like they had a chance to have a bounce back year, fell apart.
Definitely.
Unless they pull off that Harden trade, and even with the Harden trade, I don't know how that's going to look.
I don't buy that.
Yeah, if they do that, then maybe they're okay. But you're really looking at like a Lakers, Portland, Utah, Dallas conference, and that's it.
Yeah.
East side, you kind of think the Sixers are now a year removed from looking pretty good. They're a mess. The Raptors, because they just lost Ibaka, right? And
they did lose Ibaka, and they lost Gasol.
Lowry. We got Gasol too.
Yeah, y'all got Gasol.
And then Lowry stayed.
Lowry and Van Fleet stayed. They paid a lot of money for Van Fleet, I believe. I believe it was like an $85 million contract.
Which is a great story. I love that.
Yeah.
So I feel like the Raptors didn't fall apart, but they got a little worse probably.
Yeah, they lost some depth, some big.
And they hamstrung themselves a little bit, paying that. And not that Van Fleet doesn't deserve it; he absolutely does.
No, for sure.
With him and Lowry now, like it's going to be a little hard for them to acquire more. So they're a little stuck. I think Boston's Boston. I don't know that Hayward leaving like sucks for them or whatever, but
no, I agree with you. I think they're better without Hayward to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I think their future is in Tatum anyway. Tatum and Brown. Yeah. I always thought that,
well, it's funny though, because you talk about teams winning and getting high draft picks. I mean, look what Danny Ainge did, to Brooklyn. Yeah. They were making off the Eastern Conference Finals, and they got the first pick the following season. I mean, Jesus.
Yeah, it's crazy. So, and then Miami, I think should look a little better, unless they just are spent from the short off season. I feel like they should feel like still in the groove and better than they were last year. and more supportive of Butler, and I feel like they should feel more comfortable in that scenario, because they sort of proved a lot to themselves.
Yeah, Butler's a beast.
Yeah, and so then the Bucs I think got worse, and I think Giannis is looking at the door now.
Definitely.
I don't think that the Bucs win. I think their window's closed, and I feel like you could just feel it in Giannis. He's waiting. He's looking at the door.
They're trying though. I feel like they're trying to get some pieces around him, but
yeah,
it might have
they
been a little
signed
bit too late.
Drew Holiday, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I just feel like I don't think Holiday is the difference between a mid-round exit and the NBA Finals for them.
I agree with you on that.
So I feel like one more year of that or less, and they lose Giannis.
For sure.
In my opinion, and I'm sure he's getting a lot of pressure from Nike. Like, please, can you please play in a bigger market than Milwaukee? He has to be.
LA
KD went to the coast specifically, I'm sure, because Nike was like, listen, we will literally pay you twice as much if you don't play in Oklahoma.
Yeah, that one kind of hurt. I was there when so I lived in Oklahoma City, and I saw him play his last game in Oklahoma, and it was the 4th of July. He announced that he was leaving. Oh my goodness, man. Would you not believe, man, how like it was literally like people were rioting in the streets. It hurt,
Right.
It sucked. So I agree with you.
So I feel like Giannis he's just clocking in for this year, I think. But speaking of KD, so bring us to Brooklyn. I feel like Brooklyn, all things even and everyone healthy, I think Brooklyn makes the finals. And that's my bold prediction. I do think that team makes the finals. I do wonder. So I wonder about Kyrie. Like, you wonder how KD's going to look after his injury. But I wonder equally with Kyrie, because Kyrie just has a general, like, rotating door with, like, health stuff sometimes. Sometimes he's just banged up, often. Yeah. And so you just wonder about that generally. I wonder about that as much as I wonder about KD's legs, But I don't know that I worry about Kyrie and KD gelling, only because, one, like, KD spent a majority of his career with Westbrook, who's my favorite player, but he's a strong personality. And if KD didn't have a problem with Westbrook sometimes not being reeled in and sometimes being not, I don't think he's divisive, because I think Westbrook's an incredible leader. That's what I think that he gets a bad rap, but I do think that he's definitely a polarizing guy, And I feel like if KD didn't have any issues playing with him, they were magic together, I thought. And then I thought Golden State was an even more difficult scenario for KD, because they did a great job of making him the primary, as well he should be, because he's the best player in basketball when he's healthy. But like, he is sharing the spotlight with 3 other all-stars. One of them is the unquestionable face of the franchise, and that was a big source of division in the Bay Area. Like, Bay Area fans didn't like KD just for fear of him overtaking Steph. They always would let him have it. And like, I remember hearing like one of my like some of the people that I do, like, part of like my I do business with, like, with my management and stuff like that, like they're from the Bay Area, so like they know like a lot of people from like KD's camp and like people associated with the Warriors and things like that. And so I remember them telling me before KD announced that he was going to the Warriors, they were like, we know KD's coming because his brother just hit us up to help him find a house in San Francisco. Then like all throughout those couple of years, they would say like he kind of wants out, like, not ASAP, but as soon as he's kind of feel like his business is done there, because he was unhappy. Like, the fans never accepted him, and he was always overshadowed by guys, even though he was put in a position to be the best player on the team. And I feel like if he could go from playing with a strong-willed guy like Westbrook and then playing under that sort of pressure, like, you got to consider that how bad that sucks for KD, that like the entire nation is clowning on this fool for going to the Warriors. And he's not even comfortable playing home games because the home team is also like, you're not Steph.
Yeah.
That sucks, So I feel like if he can deal with that, he can deal with Kyrie.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
I don't think that they'll have Yeah, I don't think that they would have a problem mixing in. I just think that if they stay healthy, they can make it work.
For sure. That's a very big question, whether if Kyrie can stay healthy. He's had some durability issues. I like it coming down to the Nets and Boston. I like Boston a lot. I think Tatum's phenomenal. Obviously, we know he's the future. And I like the fact that Gordon Hayward left the team because, again, I feel like he was hurting the team more than helping them. So it was a good thing. Gordon Hayward is a fantastic player, no disrespect to him, but I feel like he just didn't gel well with the Celtics. So in my opinion, it's going to come down to Brooklyn or Boston. Either, Kyrie can, stay healthy and make it work. Cause like what you said, you brought up great points. I think they can work together. I do think they can. And I think KD will have, Kyrie in check and will be looking out for him and stuff, and vice versa. So, I do think it'll work. I think it's going to come down to Boston and Brooklyn in the Eastern Conference Finals, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I feel like, too, with Brooklyn, so you look at Kyrie, for example. A lot of Kyrie's issues in the past was not being able to have sort of the validation of being able to say, okay, I'm experienced, I'm really good at this, I've been to the dance, this is my team. I want you guys to all be able to look at me and know that this is my team, just follow my lead. And he couldn't have that in Cleveland, and he felt like he didn't have that respect in Boston. And on the flip side of it, when you look at KD, that's something that he's never seemed to have an issue with. Like when he was in Oklahoma City, he would defer to Westbrook all the time. Like, this is as much his team as mine. He didn't care as long as he was playing good basketball.
Yeah.
And when he was with the Warriors, like, he was willing to say, fine, this is all of your guys' team, and I'm just a guest here. Whatever. Yeah. I'm just going to make this work, help you guys win some titles, and that's fine. So I feel like going to a team like Brooklyn, if that's the only concern that Kyrie has, is that he wants to be able to be in the driver's seat and kind of captain the team, I don't think KD would have a problem with that. And especially because Kyrie's more of a pure point guard than Steph was. Kyrie's going to make sure that KD is the best version of himself, and he's just great enough on offense that he's also going to make sure the defense stays honest, so KD's going to have a lot of open looks because of that.
Yeah, I like how this team is built around, they can shoot. That's no mystery about that. Joe is a fantastic role player as well that'll, contribute to their success. So I definitely see that working out. Do you like Boston and go into the Eastern Conference though with Brooklyn?
Oh yeah. And I think I agree with you that I feel like, I do like Brooklyn maybe making the finals, but I thought Boston was going to beat Miami this year. I sort of think if you run that back 10 times, Boston probably wins 8 of them. Like, I feel like Boston should have won that series.
Yeah, the biggest issue is the center. I feel like that was their undoing.
Yeah. So yeah, I feel like Boston should have won that, and I feel like this year they should look better. So I probably see Boston making the finals as much as I do Brooklyn, but I do think it's kind of a 2-horse race, and Miami is like right there with them. I think Miami should look better than last year, but I don't know that they're better than Boston. I don't think they are.
That's fair. So last question before we wrap it up, TJ, is there any advice that you'd give, or maybe just real quick words you give to people that are going out there and chasing their dream but a little bit shy about starting?
Actually, it's funny, this tattoo on my chest on this side is a little like kind of poem titled The Road. You could probably find it if you try to Google search Antonio Inoki, The Road. He wrote it. It was written on the wall in New Japan Dojo, and I used to see it every day. And it's really just the writing is the moral of the story is that the road, which is your life, you never know where it's going to go, and you never know what you're going to do is going to pan out. And sometimes you don't even have a plan, but you should just go ahead and take that first step anyway, because every step you take is going to shortly and quickly start to form a road, and it's going to be the path of your life. And if you know what you want to do, especially if you know what you want to do and you know what makes you happy, as long as you're having fun doing it and it still makes you happy, then there's really nothing to worry about. And I know that sounds like very simplistic advice, and it sounds kind of obvious in nature, but in a way there's so much wisdom in that. there's a motivational speaker. God, I can't remember his name for the life of me. I want to say his first name is Eric something, like Thomas, I don't know. And he has this great story he'll tell in his talks and stuff. And the moral of his story is, when you want to succeed as bad as you want to breathe, then you'll be successful. And this analogy of his story is meeting with somebody who wants advice and the keys to success, and he tells them to go to the beach with him, and they walk out into the water, and he holds his head underwater once they get deep enough, and the guy struggles and struggles and struggles and gets out of the water, and he's like, I don't know what's wrong with you, you're crazy. And he says to him, when you want to succeed as bad as you want to take that breath, you're going to be successful, because there's nothing else in the world you want to do. That's when you love something so much, you're willing to lose sleep over it, you're willing to not eat for it. This is how Kobe Bryant gets up at 3 a.m. to do a workout, because he can't think of any other way to live. Yeah. There's nothing in the world he would want more to do than that. Whatever you want to do, doctor, architect, firefighter, librarian, doesn't matter. Work in a warehouse. Who cares? Whatever you love to do, if you really truly love it, you're having fun and it makes you happy, you're always going to find the answers to your questions. It's when you stop caring about it that you're going to run into hurdles and questions. You're going to be like, I don't need to answer this. I'm over it. I don't care. So if you want to be successful, whatever it is you want to do, whatever dream you want to chase, as long as you are having fun, trust yourself. Have faith in the process, because you'll find the answers you're looking for.
Hey, those are some great words, TJ. I want to go ahead and thank you again for giving me the time. I mean, you're a very busy person, so thank you for stopping on the show. I appreciate it. Is there anything you want to let the audience know before we sign off?
No, just, if you're hearing me for the first time, thank you for, sticking with me through this.
Yeah.
If you know who I am, then thank you for watching. Thank you for following. If you want to see more of me, all my socials are under @megatjp, as your shirt says.
Yeah, there you go.
Mostly just Twitter and Instagram more than anything else. I have a Twitch stream as well, also megatjp. You could find all the info of where I'm wrestling or what I'm doing through there. Impact Wrestling, New Japan, Major League Wrestling, AAA, places you can find me. So
awesome.
Check them out.
Awesome. And I will have the link to all those places in the description here below. Thank you very much for everybody listening. I hope you all have a great week. I'll catch you later, guys. Goodbye.